So part of being a small boat angler is to have a spirit of adventure and to use your small boat to your greatest advantage. Leverage the fact that you don't need a boat ramp to put in a small boat and go places where other people can't, but fish are still at. And this is a situation here. This is a spillway below a private pond. The pond doesn't get fished that much, and the fishing up there is really good, don't get me wrong. But nobody fishes here. There's a few folks that fish every once in a while in the literal spillway behind the dam. So these fish see some lures. It's a well-known place to come down and get a quick couple bass or maybe a pickerel if you're lucky, sometimes even some crappie. But that's the extent of it. And no one has ever thought, hey, I should put a canoe in here and explore the area. Well, that's all part of being the adventurous bass anglers that we're supposed to be when we have canoes and kayaks at our disposal. And a few years back over Christmas, I decided, you know what? I need to put my canoe in below the lake and paddle down here and see what happens. And what happened was an hour and a half of a bass fest of just catching bass after bass, fish that had never seen a lure probably in their entire life. I've done that every year since, and with pretty much the same results. I haven't caught a real giant back here, but I guarantee you they're here. So I think sometimes I see folks using kayaks and canoes as if they're just like a small bass boat, and they put them in, they have them on trailers, and they put them in at boat ramps just like a bass boat, and they don't think about the full capabilities of these crafts. Of course, you have to take away your wheels, and you have to take away your electronics, and you have to take away your motors and your fish finders, but the rewards that could be waiting for you around the next bend could be far beyond your expectations. First fish of the day here behind the pond, and the nice pound and a half or so largemouth. Gotta love it when you catch these fish like this. He ate that worm as on the way down about 6 seconds after it hit the water. Probably the first worm he's seen in years, if not ever. Pretty boy. He's got a little bit of black blotch right there above the lateral line. The blotchy bass syndrome I've talked about in other videos. It is pervasive, and they're still trying to figure out exactly what causes it. They do know what it is now. It's basically a virus. Not lethal, but a virus. It's transmitted in that way. Anyway, good start. We'll see what we get next. See you, bud. Second fish, one of my favorites, non-bass species, Mr. Chain Pickerel. They're always around, always willing to bite, always ready to tug on your string. They're a pretty fish with that beautiful chain pattern that they have there. They have no problem at all biting plastic worms. One of the reasons why I have a 15-pound fluorocarbon leader on all my stuff when I fish this area is for these guys. Bye. Yep, cool animal. Third fish, haven't moved. Nice little chunk, nothing special. But adventure fishing is definitely more about the experience and the surroundings than it is about the size. And about the numbers too, I would say. But don't get me wrong, there's some big fish in here. But you know what, as long as they keep biting, I really don't care. After a while, you kind of stop worrying about size. At least I certainly have over the last 40 years. Size was a lot more important to me when I was 25 and full of piss and vinegar than now that I'm in my 50s, and I'm just happy to be here catching fish. Pretty guy, no sign of blotchiness on this one. No hesitation about biting either. See you, bud. Oh, thank you. That feeling of going down this stream, not knowing for sure what's around each bend, never sure what you might see. That's all part of adventure fishing. That's all part of kayak and canoe fishing. At least the kind I grew up doing. And it probably separates. It's probably something that separates adventure people to just regular anglers. Many of whom are very good at what they do, which is go into a lake with a boat and a motor and a trolling motor and the whole 9 yards and fishing for their fish, and they're very good at it. But this is what I'm good at, and that is looking for places off the grid, looking for places that other people don't fish, and finding fish there. This goes way back to my early days of fishing in New Jersey, where I discovered quite by accident that if you go up the streams that flow into these lakes up there, the fishing can be unbelievable. And that became, all through my high school years, a way to really just maximize my efficiency on the water. There was one lake in particular I can think of that I would fish with my dad sometimes, and the fishing was so great up in that creek that we would put in the put in was at the front of the lake. We would put in there, paddle all the way across the lake without even picking up our fishing rods, and not even start until we got to where the mouth of the incoming stream was. And you could go back in there and catch a mixed bag of bass and pickerel between two people, 2.5 hours, 15 to 20 fish. It would take you a day on the lake to catch that, if you even could. So this exploration vibe that I have has been ingrained in me from an early age, and it has really led me to some really unique experiences in a lot of different states. So here we have a beaver lodge. This is the place where the beavers stay when they're not out doing their thing. Located adjacent to a body of water, or a stream in this case. Here you can see where they've chewed out or dug out an area off the main slough. If there's some of the sticks and logs are running into the water there. Classic entryway of an active beaver lodge. So beaver lodges, their entrance is actually located underwater. They enter and leave the lodge underwater. They climb up above water inside the lodge where it's dry. It's an adaptation they have for keeping warmer during the winter. If you think about it, water can only be so cold. It can't be below freezing. And in many parts of the range where beavers are found, it's commonly below freezing. So staying in and out of the water makes sense if you're in Minnesota, where it's 30 below zero outside of the water. Plus, it also allows them to access the water even when it's frozen. They tend to pile up a lot of sticks and small branches, the freshly cut ones that they hoard in the fall before winter. Those are all piled underneath the water surface around the lodge. That's what they eat, and so that's the beaver equivalent of what squirrels and chipmunks do when they're hoarding nuts in their burrows or their nests. So this is a fairly large beaver lodge. It probably stands about 3.5 feet above the surface of the water here, and this is part of why beavers build dams. And that is to back up water so they can have a lodge that has access to the water, a steady supply of water, if you will, a steady water level. So they always have access to the water. If they didn't back up the creek and they built their lodge, sometimes the creek would be, or their lodge would be almost underwater, and other times it might be 50 feet from the water. So this is one of the reasons why scientists believe that they build dams and back up water. Another one of the cool things you get to see when you take these little adventure trips on these small creeks that don't see a lot of people, and just part of the neatness of doing these kinds of deals, that bonus features, if you will, that have little or nothing to do with catching fish. Not big, but feisty. Another one of my favorite fish, caught right next to the beaver lodge. Chain pickerel are like the same kinds of places that bass do. They do tend to gravitate more towards plants maybe than bass do, but they like sticks and deep water and drop-offs and all the same kinds of things. They're also a cool animal though, because they're perfectly happy in 2 inches of water. And fishing for them back there with topwaters is an amazing thing. I don't know if you can do that everywhere, but in New Jersey you sure could. You throw a buzzbait in a foot of water back in those flats in the backs of some of those lakes that I used to fish, and you get like 3 wakes of these guys racing each other to be the first one to destroy the buzzbait. Pretty cool. But yeah, again, what a pretty little fish these are. You know, those teeth, on the other hand, maybe not so pretty. Pike of all kinds, you know, everything in the pike family, they are fish eaters. They don't do a lot else, and they are designed for it. You see all those choppers up there on the top of the roof of their mouth. They attack fish like this and grab the fish sideways, basically. When they clamp down, it's not going anywhere, and then they maneuver it around and swallow it head first like anything else. Another nice little largemouth. You know, he's just a little guy. He bit it with abandon though. One thing I have noticed over the years is that the fish you catch here this is actually New Year's Eve day, but late in the year, early in the year, whatever it is, they're so colored up. Just real bold markings I've noticed. I don't know exactly what's going on with that, if that's just cold water. Most of the ones I've ever caught with bold markings like that in this pond or behind the pond or whatever has always been in winter. So I just broke off a fish on my plastic worm not about 5 minutes ago, I guess. And I knew it wasn't a pickerel or anything like that. It didn't bite. It didn't break down near the knot. It broke up further, and I just knew I had a bad encounter with one of these brushy tree things on one side, and I should have retied then. Of course I didn't, because that's the way I go, and broke the fish off. Son of a gun. Spent a whole lot of time retying. Got everything set up again. 2 casts, nothing. So I decided to pick up my spinnerbait, which I hadn't even caught a fish on yet today. I threw that up there, and this guy came for a visit. Really nice fish, probably solid 2 pounds, and something was hanging out of his mouth. And oh, what could it be? Oh, that looks familiar. Yep, that is the fish that I just broke off 5 minutes ago on a different lure in the same place. So what's interesting is that I broke him off about where the front of the canoe is, and I made a cast way upstream and caught him about a quarter of the way, well, 3/4 of the way to the canoe. So look how much that fish moved in that short amount of time, and was still hungry enough to go chomp a spinnerbait. Now he swallowed the snot out of that worm after I broke him off, so I'm going to have to just cut the line and call it a loss there. But yeah, really nice bass back here, and this is how untouched these bass are. Literally no problem. I will just go eat this and don't worry about the floss coming out of my mouth later. Oh, here's something else. I'm going to go eat that too. Pretty amazing. So I'm going to go cut this line as close as I can to the back of the gullet there and let this guy go and see if I can catch some more. Now that I'm retied and such. Nothing like catching fish like this when you're back here all by yourself and you know no one has fished back here other than you in probably 3 decades. Can't beat it. Alright, and here we are down at the bottom of the area I've been fishing. It ends in spectacular fashion with this unbelievable beaver dam. that those critters have created to make this more homey for them. Now, in the case of all the beaver dams I've ever seen across the country, this isn't all that impressive, but for a little stream like this, it's pretty amazing. It's probably 30 inches, maybe 3 feet high, at least as far as, you know, the water level I'm sitting at right now versus the water level that's down below the dam, down there. They make these things by dragging a whole bunch of sticks and logs and branches over here, weaving them into the existing structure and packing it down with some mud. Most of this is probably conducted at night, especially here in the south. But yeah, it's pretty amazing, you know. And this is not just one beaver dam here. This is the main one across the actual channel. But they weren't satisfied with that, because when they put this down, it would start spilling in different parts of the area. It would start spilling over there, or it starts spilling over here. And so they went around and created little mini dams all up and down the area here to reach the level that they're looking for. And it's pretty much about the same level every year that I've come here. They don't seem to be that interested in getting it any higher for whatever reason. I am not a mammal biologist. I do not intimately know a lot about beavers, just my own experiences. These dams are, and to me, one of the most impressive things that a creature in nature creates. I've seen some in Minnesota in the Boundary Waters area up near Canada that are unbelievable. I've seen some that are probably 100 feet wide, 3 feet tall, just spectacular. Trying to get a canoe over top of that to get to the other side of it is pretty an interesting adventure in and of itself, let's just say. Probably one of the most memorable things I've ever seen, though. I did see the dam, but we were actually portaging into this lake in the Boundary Waters to go fishing for the day. We got about halfway, maybe more than halfway up the path. The path was probably about 3/4 of a mile, and all of a sudden we hit water. The path just ended in water. I'm like, huh, that's not good. And so we just finally said, well, you know what? We don't need to portage everything anymore. So we put the canoe down in the water, which was now the path, and loaded it back up with our stuff, paddled down the path, and got to the lake where you normally would, you know, the paths usually end at a put-in, and the lake was there. It was, and we started paddling around and fishing the lake, and the lake was probably up 4 or 5 feet, and it had flooded 2 of the 3 campsites that were on the lake. Now that wasn't a problem for us, since we weren't camping there that day, but somebody who got a permit for that lake and went in there to go camping would be pretty disappointed to find out that they had a choice of one, or maybe there's someone at that one that's dry and they have no choice anymore. And we finally went to the outlet of the lake, kind of like I just did here, where you can get down to where it was. And up there, it's a lot of glacier activity that created those lakes. There are a lot of long, narrow little channels and such like that. So we got up there, and the outlet of the lake was just in this little narrow gorge. I mean, I don't know what to call it, you know, but it was squeezed between some big rock shelves, and the beavers had put a 5-foot high dam between there, and that's what had raised the lake. And you really couldn't get on the other side of it to see, but we were on the top looking down. It was unreal. I mean, I'm not sure it wasn't over our heads if we had gotten down at the bottom of that. That was the most impressive dam I've seen. It was only probably about maybe 30 feet wide, maybe 50 feet wide, probably not any wider than that, but the height was unbelievable. So beavers have a strong influence on the aquatic habitats where they inhabit, and this is no exception here, where they've backed the water back almost to the spillway of the lake. So you know, it's just another example of some of the cool things that you can find on these adventure fishing trips. This has been a really neat day. The wind has been howling, so getting up on that lake would have been a frustrating experience. Might have caught more fish up there, possibly, maybe, certainly bigger fish, but it would have been very frustrating to fish up there, and sitting down here fishing this stuff, catching fish, seeing all these cool things down here, and hearing the wind howling overhead. It gives you a good feeling. This has been a great way to spend the New Year's Eve day 2024. Caught about a half dozen fish, mostly bass, couple pickerel. What a great way to spend an afternoon. Adventure fishing, it's not for everyone, for sure, but it gives you just some really special moments. No matter where you live, there's always an opportunity for some fishing adventure trips, and you will be surprised and delighted, I think, at what you can run into. So I am about to paddle back up and call it a day, I think. But what a special way to end the year of 2024. Adventure fishing, you all should give it a try.